Number 3 on this list involves a boundary rider who found a rocky hill in western New South Wales and accidentally built one of the world's largest mining companies. Number 27 involves the world's largest coal port, and most people outside Australia have no idea it exists. These are 50 facts about New South Wales, all of them true, and none of them are what you expect. Fact 1. New South Wales covers roughly 800,000 square kilometres, a vast area that is larger than every country in Western Europe except France and Spain. People tend to picture New South Wales as Sydney plus some countryside, but the actual footprint stretches from the Pacific coast to the arid outback along the edge of 3 other states. Fact 2. New South Wales has a population of around 8.3 million, more than the entire population of New Zealand or Norway. The state's economy accounts for 30.6% of Australia's gross domestic product. The harbour city is the front door. The state itself is a country. Fact 3. The western boundary of New South Wales is a straight line, drawn with a ruler. It was never a natural border. It was a colonial boundary drawn to contain and manage territory, not to follow any river or geographic feature. Fact 4. The Blue Mountains, which blocked European expansion west from Sydney for 25 years, are not technically mountains at all. They are a dissected plateau, and the edges drop away in vertical sandstone cliffs. Settlers trying to climb over them were not ascending a peak. They were walking toward a ledge. Fact 5. The Snowy Mountains contain Australia's highest point, Mount Kosciuszko, at 2,228 metres. It was named by Polish explorer Paul Edmund Strzelecki in 1840. By global standards, it is one of the more modest, highest peaks on Earth, and it is shorter than the base camp approach to Mount Everest. Fact 6. New South Wales operates across 3 distinct climate zones at once. The coast is temperate, the inland tablelands are cold and dry, and the far west is arid desert. At the same moment, Sydney is having a mild winter day, the western outback can be recording temperatures above 45 degrees Celsius. Fact 7. The Murray-Darling Basin, most of which sits inside New South Wales, drains 14% of Australia's entire land area into a single river system. That system feeds the most productive agricultural region on the continent, and in the 19th century, it served as the highway that connected inland mining towns to coastal ports. Fact 8. Sydney sits at roughly the same latitude as San Francisco, and its climate is mild and warm. Its latitude is not far from where Rome sits on the European map. Now the geography is set. Here is what happened on it. Fact 9. Australia's first major gold rush began in New South Wales, not Victoria. On the 12th of February, 1851, Edward Hargraves and his guide, John Lister, arrived at Lewis Ponds Creek near Bathurst and found gold. The proclamation went out on the 14th of May, 1851. Victoria's rush followed shortly after and eventually got more attention, but New South Wales got there first. Fact 10. Within 1 year of the OFHIR discovery, New South Wales goldfields yielded 850,000 ounces, roughly 24.5 tonnes in a single calendar year. A newspaper in Bathurst called it a complete mental madness, reporting that the entire community had dropped everything to chase gold. Fact 11. The New South Wales government had concealed earlier gold discoveries in the colony. The authorities knew gold was there before 1851, and they suppressed the information to prevent social disruption. The rush happened partly because that containment eventually failed. Fact 12. The route west from Sydney to Bathurst became so congested that entire towns emptied as residents joined the flow. There was no government program, no planned migration. People just left. Fact 13. Sydney's population doubled in under a decade, growing from 44,000 in 1851 to 95,000 by 1860. The whole colony climbed from 197,000 to 350,000 in the same period, with workers arriving from Britain, China, the American goldfields, and across the Pacific. Fact 14. In 1854, the Sydney Mint opened as the first royal mint ever established outside England. Not in Canada, not in India, not in South Africa. In New South Wales, the gold coming out of the interior was too large in volume to ship to London for processing. Fact 15. Merchants, suppliers, and carriers followed the miners west. Bathurst Road became the economic lifeline of the colony. Fact 16. By the 1880s, New South Wales had reached some of the highest per capita incomes in the world, driven by regional resource extraction and 3 decades of gold money. Most of that prosperity originated from outside the capital. Gold started it. What came next was bigger, and it started with a man doing the least glamorous job in the country. Fact 17. In 1883, a boundary rider named Charles Raspe was mustering sheep in far western New South Wales when he found silver ore on a low, broken-looking hill near the South Australian border. He called it Broken Hill, and that is where the city got its name. The ore body he found formed approximately 1.8 billion years ago. Fact 18. That deposit turned out to be one of the largest silver, lead, and zinc ore bodies ever discovered on Earth. Through 1946, the Broken Hill deposit yielded 7.7 million tons of lead, 6.6 million tons of zinc, and 538 million ounces of silver, and even after 140 years of extraction, the mine still produces about 2 million tons annually. Fact 19. The Broken Hill Proprietary Company, known as BHP, was formed to mine that deposit. It eventually became Australia's largest company, and through mergers, it grew into BHP Billiton, one of the world's biggest diversified resources businesses. It all started with one boundary rider in 1883. Fact 20. Broken Hill has been continuously mined for over 140 years, sitting 1,160 kilometers from Sydney. When mining began, there was no rail connection and no sealed road for decades. The industry built its own infrastructure to survive. Fact 21. The Great Cobar Copper Mine operated from 1871 to 1919. The company built an electrolytic copper refinery at Lithgow, powered it from a coal mine the company also operated, and ran a second coal operation near Singleton to handle the load. They built a vertically integrated industrial system that spanned several regions of New South Wales to process copper from a single mine in the outback. Fact 22. Lithgow, a small city in the Blue Mountains foothills, was simultaneously running an iron and steel works, a copper refinery, a small arms factory, and wool mills in the late 19th century, all powered by local coal found in 1858. A town Australians think of as a highway stop was once a serious industrial centre. Fact 23rd. The Lithgow Small Arms Factory opened in 1912. It produced military weapons, including the Owen submachine gun and the L1A1 self-loading rifle during both World Wars. Fact 24. The New England region served as a major tin mining centre in the 19th century. The Ottery Tin Mine was the largest historic hard rock tin producer in the area. While gold and silver took the headlines, tin was quietly funding regional development in the north. Fact 25. The labour movement that shaped the Australian Labor Party drew early strength from the Broken Hill unions. Those unions ran some of the most significant industrial strikes in Australian history. The political infrastructure of modern Australia has roots in a mine in far western New South Wales. Fact 26. An industrial network connecting Cobar's copper mine, Lithgow's refinery, a Hunter Valley coal mine, and a Lithgow coke works was running in New South Wales before 1900. This was not artisanal extraction. This was vertically integrated industrial manufacturing, comparable to what was running in the steel valleys of Pennsylvania. That makes 26 facts, and we are not yet halfway with the biggest engineering project still to come. The next section contains the fact about Newcastle that people outside New South Wales genuinely do not know, even though it is the largest of its kind on Earth. Fact 27. The world's largest coal export port is in Newcastle, New South Wales, not in Rotterdam, not in Houston, not in Shanghai, but in a city 160 kilometres north of Sydney, named after a coal town in northeastern England. It has held that title for decades, and it still holds it now. Fact 28. Australia's first railway opened on December 10th, 1831, in Newcastle. It was built by the Australian Agricultural Company to move coal from their mine to the harbour. Sydney's first public railway did not open until 1855, meaning Newcastle had a working railway 24 years before the capital, because coal needed to get to ships and carts were too slow. Fact 29. The Australian Agricultural Company's Newcastle Railway used cast iron fishbelly rails on an inclined plane as a gravitational railway. It was entirely private, built for a single commercial purpose, and it proved that railways could work in Australian conditions decades before the government built one. Fact 30. The phrase carrying coals to Newcastle came from Newcastle upon Tyne in England. The idea was that bringing coal there was pointless because the place already had too much. The Australian Newcastle then surpassed the English original and became the larger coal operation. The idiom became literally accurate, but in the wrong direction. Fact 31. In 2019 to 2020, New South Wales ranked 4th in global coal production, behind China, India, and Indonesia. It produced 503 million tonnes and accounted for 6.9% of global output that year. Fact 32. 77% of that coal was exported, mainly to supply steel and power industries in Japan, South Korea, and China. New South Wales is not burning most of its own coal. It is fueling the industrial base of Asia. Fact 33. The Mount Kira colliery began operating in 1848 and ran for 143 years. Mechanized mining did not start there until 1940, meaning hand and contract mining ran for 92 consecutive years before a machine replaced the system. The mine was still operating in the 1990s. Fact 34. In 2024, Newcastle City Council voted to endorse the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty, calling for nations to end fossil fuel expansion and phase out production. This is the city that runs the world's largest coal export port, yet it voted to wind down the industry that built it. That kind of contradiction could only happen in New South Wales. The coal story runs along the coast and the ports. The next story moved inland and upward into the mountains, where the real scale of what New South Wales was capable of building would become clear. Fact 35. The Snowy Mountain Scheme is the largest engineering project ever built in Australia, constructed between 1949 and 1974. It consists of 16 major dams, 9 power stations, 2 pumping stations, and 225 kilometres of tunnels, pipelines, and aqueducts connecting them through the mountain range. Fact 36. It took 25 years to complete, longer than the Sydney Opera House, longer than the Harbour Bridge, and longer than the United States interstate highway system took to reach its initial network length. Fact 37. Over 100,000 people worked on the Snowy scheme, and 2/3 were migrants from over 30 countries, including Austria, Italy, Greece, Poland, Ukraine, Hungary, and Turkey. At peak construction in 1959, 7,300 people were living in remote mountain camps. Fact 38. Because of that workforce, the Snowy Mountains scheme is considered the birthplace of Australian multiculturalism, not Sydney and not Melbourne, but a remote construction site in the mountains of southeastern New South Wales, where the government ran free English classes in every camp and township. Fact 39. The authority organised naturalisation ceremonies and international clubs throughout construction. Many workers became Australian citizens at ceremonies in mountain towns while the tunnelling was still underway. Fact 40. The Snowy scheme is now the largest renewable energy generator on mainland Australia, producing about 67% of all renewable energy in the mainland national electricity market. A project built to fix post-war power shortages is still the backbone of Australia's renewable energy supply. Fact 41st. The American Society of Civil Engineers listed the Snowy Mountains scheme alongside the Panama Canal and the Channel Tunnel as a world-class civil engineering project, one of the few non-American entries on a list dominated by US infrastructure. Fact 42. The scheme captures water that would naturally flow east into the Snowy River and redirects it west through the mountain range. It drops the water through power stations, then feeds it into the Murray-Darling irrigation system. The mountains were turned into a power source and a water delivery system at the same time. Fact 43. 121 workers died during construction of the Snowy scheme. The project is celebrated as a triumph of engineering, but those deaths often end up in the small print. Tunnels were cut at altitude with early drilling technology in conditions that killed more than one worker per month on average across the project's life. Fact 44. In 1885, the New South Wales government decided Wollongong Harbour was too small for the Southern Coalfields coal trade and resolved to build Port Kembla instead. The Harbour Act passed in 1889. The inner harbour did not open until 1960. The government made the decision and then took 75 years to finish the infrastructure. Fact 45. Port Kembla is New South Wales's largest motor vehicle import hub, its main grain export terminal, and the state's second largest coal export port after Newcastle. Most Australians drive past it on the highway without knowing what it does. Fact 46. Tamworth switched on Australia's first municipal electric street lighting on the 9th of November, 1888, making it the first city in Australia and the first municipality in the entire Southern Hemisphere to light its streets with electricity. Sydney did not do the same for another 15 years. Fact 47th. The Sydney Park Brickworks operated as an industrial site for over a century. When it was converted to a park, there was debate about demolishing the chimneys and kilns, but the community pushed back and the structures were kept. The park's identity is now tied to the industrial past that residents chose to preserve. Fact 48. The Goulburn Railway Station, opened in 1869, is the earliest surviving first-class station building in New South Wales, and it has been in continuous active use ever since. Most of the railway infrastructure Australians use today was built well after Goulburn Station was already running. Fact 49. BlueScope Steelworks at Port Kembla has been producing steel for over 100 years, including steel for warships during the Second World War. It is now converting to direct reduced iron production, a process that can continue using Pilbara ores while cutting carbon emissions. The steelworks that built the war fleet is being re-engineered for a low-carbon economy. Fact 50. The picture most people have of New South Wales is about 3 kilometres wide. It runs from the Opera House to the Harbour Bridge, with a ferry crossing in the middle. That image is real and it's worth keeping, but behind it is the world's largest coal port, the first railway in Australia, the first Royal Mint ever opened outside England, the birthplace of multiculturalism in the country, and the largest renewable energy project on the mainland. None of those achievements happened in Sydney. They happened in the regions that people fly over, drive through, or never reach. The postcard was always just the front of the building. The actual empire was built somewhere else entirely. The real wealth of New South Wales was dug out of the ground in the outback, tunneled through mountains, and loaded onto ships from ports that most visitors never see. If any of these facts changed how you see this state, drop a comment on which one landed hardest. There is a lot more of this coming.